Hi guys, Michael Abayemi here. For today's video, I figured I would take a look at all my thoughts on the Phase 4 movies of the MCU. Right now, everybody's currently waiting for the beginning of Phase 5, which is supposed to launch with Ant-Man and the Wasp's Quantumania. So before we can actually look forward, I feel it actually makes sense to take a look back at what has happened in the previous phase. I won't actually mince any words. The previous phase has been quite divisive. Like, there have been a lot of highs and lows, like some movies that really struck a chord with the audience, movies like Spider-Man No Way Home, Shang-Chi as well, and as well as some very low lows. Like, a lot of people actually consider Thor Love and Thunder to be one of the lowest points in the entire phase, and even some that were kind of in the middle. So today I'll be putting together all my reviews for all the films in Phase 4 of the MCU. Keep in mind that this only includes movies, so I wouldn't be including any TV shows like WandaVision or Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Even though I already had a coverage of those shows on my channel, I'll be putting a link in the description for those who care to check them out. So without further ado, these are my thoughts on Phase 4 of the MCU. The Marvel Cinematic Universe finally returns to the big screen after being forced to take a more than year-long break. Within that time though, we've gotten not one, but 3 excellent MCU shows, with Loki still ongoing as we speak. All that is to say that fans of the MCU have still been getting their MCU fix this last couple of months. So with Black Widow, what many of us are no doubt hoping for is a reminder of what sets these MCU movies apart from everything else. But does it mark a triumphant return, or is it just a simple case of too little too late? Hi guys, Michael Abayemi here, and today I'm reviewing Black Widow. Set following the events of Captain America Civil War, the movie finds Natasha Romanoff on the run following her reluctance to sign the Sokovia Accords. It also traces her origins as a former KGB agent, most of which plays out over an opening montage. She is soon forced out of hiding and back into the spy game though, when an old acquaintance reaches out to her out of the blue. Now she must confront the demons of her past, while being haunted by a deadly assassin that seems to know her every move. I confess that I was never really that keen on a solo Black Widow movie, especially coming this late in the overall MCU. And my skepticism didn't exactly wane in the intervening time we had to wait following the film's delays. So you can take everything I'm about to say with a grain of salt, and believe me when I say that your mileage may very well vary. But I honestly believe that this is one of the weaker movies we've gotten in the MCU thus far. This is not to say that the movie was bad, just that it doesn't quite reach the same heights as the movies that came before it. My main issue with the movie then stems from the very nature of its narrative. The fact that the film is a prequel immediately removes any sense of tension or urgency. We already know what happens with Natasha Romanoff in Avengers Endgame, as well as the role she had to play in Avengers Infinity War. So any threat she goes up against in this film gets instantly diffused by that knowledge. And the events of the movie itself ultimately adds nothing new to the MCU or any of its characters. All that said, the film still delivers what the MCU does best, some truly jaw-dropping spectacle. The set pieces are some of the very best I've seen in a while, even though the action was of the leave your brain at the door variety. Because we've got to remember that these aren't superheroes in the true sense of the word, at least save for one character, so watching them perform superhuman feats can feel a bit jarring and over the top. But if this is precisely what you came for, then rejoice, because this is precisely what you get. Another highlight of the film was the stellar ensemble. Scarlett Johansson throws all her heart and soul into the role, but she is easily outshined by both David Harbour and Florence Pugh, both of whom provide much of the comic relief in the film. It is a shame we can't offer the same praise to the two villains though, both of which felt weak and terribly underdeveloped in comparison. And for anyone wondering, the film does have a post-credit scene, but it didn't feel like much more than an ad for one of the upcoming Disney Plus shows. Black Widow is not the epic swan song fans of Natasha Romanoff might be hoping for. Neither is it that great of an origin story. What it does do well though, is remind fans of the MCU why they love this character. The film attempts to marry the spy thriller thrills of Captain America Winter Soldier with the kind of family drama and hijinks you expect to find in the Fantastic Four. And while the two don't always gel well together, the film still manages to do just enough to justify its existence. I'll give the film a 6 out of 10. Phase 4 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe was meant to kick off with Black Widow, but as anyone who had seen my review of that film would remember, I hadn't been too pleased with how it turned out. My main gripe stemmed from the fact that it didn't really move the MCU forward in any meaningful way, nor did it manage to do more than attempt to fill the gap between Captain America Civil War and Avengers Infinity War. So we basically had to rely on Disney Plus shows like Loki and WandaVision to set the stage for the current phase of the MCU, which they have to varying degrees. Loki in particular looks like it might have long-reaching ramifications for films like Spider-Man No Way Home, as well as Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. But out of everything we've gotten in Phase 4 thus far, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings feels like his first true springboard for what's to come. Hi guys, Michael Abayemi here, and today I'm reviewing Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. Set in the post-Blip portion of the MCU timeline, the film stars Simu Liu as Shang-Chi, a trained warrior who has long since turned his back on his family and their ways. He now spends his days working in LA as a valet with his best friend, Katie. But after his father and leader of the Ten Rings criminal organization sends a number of his foot soldiers to hunt him down, he finds himself drawn back into the life he thought he had already left behind. As far as MCU origin stories go, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings is one of the best ones yet. It was certainly leagues above Black Widow, which didn't even feel like an origin story in the strictest of terms. This one introduces his title character and his particular corner of the MCU without feeling like it was merely treading the same ground that past MCU origin stories had, most of which is due to his talented cast and the chemistry between them. Simu Liu shines as Shang-Chi, delivering a performance that was strong enough to carry the movie, but he was of course helped by Awkwafina, who provided much of the comic relief. It was easy to buy into their friendship because both actors managed to make it look so pure and effortless. Anthony Leung plays what is now another top-tier MCU villain in the form of Wenwu, aka the real Mandarin. There were several nods to the earlier iteration of the character throughout the film, none of which I would spoil here. But by far the biggest facet of the movie that I enjoyed was the fight choreography. The movie boasts some of the best action scenes in the MCU, borrowing heavily from Chinese cinema to create some truly jaw-dropping wild stunts that immediately call to mind films like Hero and Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. Fans of such films, and Chinese mythology in general, would definitely have plenty to ogle at, especially since it fully embraces their more fantastical side, unlike the recent Mulan live-action adaptation. This is incidentally the one area of the film that I found didn't always live up to that same high quality. I am of course talking about the special effects, which were definitely special and spectacularly so, for the most part. Some of it was convincing enough, while others were borderline cartoonish. This was especially true during the climax, where these films typically tend to get CGI heavy. But all of that is par for the course, so it shouldn't really work to pull you out of the experience that much. Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings is proof that Kevin Feige and his team of writers still have a few tricks up their sleeves. They've crafted a world that feels just as integral to the overall MCU as everything that came before it. That they've done that while telling a story that was both heartwarming and awe-inspiring bodes well for the future of the franchise. And if this is any indication of what we can expect from these movies post-Avengers Endgame, then fans still have a lot to look forward to. I'll give the film a 9 out of 10. The Marvel Cinematic Universe grows larger than ever with Eternals, the latest film to come out in Phase 4. Directed by Chloe Zhao, the movie introduces fans of the franchise to his eponymous team of superheroes and their particular slice of his overall mythology. And what a slice that is, spanning thousands of years and involving beings as old as time itself. The film is certainly grand with its ambitions, and it shows from the very first frames. But does all that ambition come at the detriment of the movie's overall execution? Hi guys, Michael Abayemi here, and today I'm reviewing Eternals. The film begins with an opening crawl that sets the stage by letting us know just how insignificant everything that has come before it is in the grand scheme of things. I won't go into too many details, but just know that we have these centuries-old beings called Eternals, and they've been sent here by the power that be to protect mankind from the Deviants, a vicious race of aliens seeking to destroy all life. And when the Deviants suddenly resurface after being gone for hundreds of years, the Eternals are forced to do what they've been sent here to do. I guess I'll have to start this review by addressing the obvious fact that it is coming 1 week later than originally planned. In the wake of the film receiving a ban in Saudi Arabia last week, the Nigerian censorship board had decided to follow suit with a ban of its own. And just like that, the movie was yanked out of cinema schedules nationwide and wouldn't resurface until 1 week later. All that because of one kiss between a gay couple and the MCU's first ever sex scene, neither of which had made it into the cut of the film we were shown. And judging by the shoddy editing that was done around the scenes in question, it would appear that this particular cut wasn't done or sanctioned by Disney itself. I mention all this just for the sake of transparency, as I do my best to appraise the film based on the chopped up version I saw. Regarding the film itself, I am pleased to say that I enjoyed it a lot more than I anticipated. It certainly feels like an MCU film, even though it ditches much of the traditional MCU formula for something far more ambitious. The film employs a non-linear narrative structure, with the plot spanning several time periods and the story getting filled in the further it went along. But it still had all the humor and action fans have come to expect from the MCU. It is clear that Chloe Zhao and her team of writers were shooting for something very grand indeed, and for the most part, they've succeeded, bringing out a distinct vision to a film that would have probably turned out differently in the hands of any other director. I can certainly see traces of our other works in films like Nomadland in this one, in scenes that showcase the striking beauty of rural communities, intermixed with the intergalactic proceedings. So yes, the film scores high in my book on the grounds of atmosphere alone. My main criticism then comes from the fact that it juggles between way too many characters, making it hard to fully invest in their struggles on an emotional level. There were characters like Mikari that I would have loved to see more of, and other characters still that were outright missing for long stretches of the film. Unlike the various other Marvel team-ups, this one didn't have the benefits of enough character development, despite its interminable runtime, and it shows. The movie is also plagued by some rather uneven special effects. Most of it was decent enough, and spectacularly so, serving to convey the epic seal Chloe Zhao was going for. But others were inexcusably bad, even looking unfinished and working to pull me out of the movie. I guess most of us have come to accept that these Marvel movies will always be effects-heavy extravaganzas, and that those effects don't always look particularly convincing. Eternals is a film that often feels like it's at war with itself. On the one hand, it's an epic sci-fi story that asks a lot of big questions while raising several possibilities. On the other hand, it tries to fit all that vast mythology and storytelling into the traditional MCU mold. This results in a mishmash that doesn't always quite work, but when it does, we get to catch glimpses of the completely stunning movie buried underneath it all, and what a sight to behold it was. I'll give the film an 8 out of 10. The movie event of 2021 is finally here. And while we have had other mega blockbusters like F9 and No Time to Die during the course of the year, none have been as highly anticipated as Spider-Man No Way Home. Positioned as the next huge MCU crossover event after Avengers Endgame, the film has had fans going crazy over its promise of the eponymous web slinger's greatest adventure yet, not to mention the return of some classic villains from its rogues gallery. But does the actual film deliver on all those promises, or has it merely set us up for disappointment? Hi guys, Michael Abaimi here, and today, I'm reviewing Spider-Man No Way Home. The film picks up right after the events of Spider-Man Far From Home, with the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man being framed for the attack in London and mysterious deaths, as well as being publicly outed as Peter Parker. The revelation will not only threaten to alter his life, but those of the people he cares about the most. This will lead him to seek the help of the Sorcerer Supreme in a bid to cast a spell that will restore his secret identity. But things do not go according to plan, and they instead end up conjuring some old enemies for Spider-Man to contend with. To say that expectations were high heading into Spider-Man No Way Home would be putting it mildly. My expectations were through the roof. This was of course following the cliffhanger of a stinger we gotten at the end of Far From Home, coupled with all the fan speculation and leaks that foreshadowed the new movie's release. Chances are you are already well versed with most of those leaks, but for the sake of avoiding spoilers, I won't be discussing any of them in this particular review. With that out of the way, let me just start by saying that Spider-Man No Way Home is quite possibly the most brilliant Spider-Man film we have gotten in the MCU thus far. It builds upon everything that came before it, without losing sight of what makes this particular iteration of Spider-Man so great to begin with, namely the comedy and overall sense of adventure. When Spider-Man first joined the MCU in Captain America Civil War, he had immediately won fans over with his fanboyish enthusiasm. Much of that was conveyed in Tom Holland's portrayal of the character, which managed to set itself apart from Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield's before him. And over the course of the 5 MCU movies he's been in since then, we've watched that character grow and develop. But not until now have we seen this level of depth from the character, marking Tom Holland's most heartfelt performance since his MCU debut. I was especially surprised by how dark and emotionally resonant the movie got, and that it could do that without losing track of the humor and heart is testament to John Ward's deft handling of the material. The director has already proven with the 2 prior entries that he has an understanding of what sets his Spider-Man movies apart from everything else in the MCU. And it was nice to see him once again step up to the plate, taking everything that worked in his previous films and running with it. Spider-Man No Way Home not only manages to deliver on all of his promises, but it also exceeds expectations on nearly every single one. It twists a narrative web that should be considered convoluted under normal circumstances, and somehow keeps it feeling grounded in real heart and emotion, despite all the magic and multiversal happenings on display. This is fan service done right, and as a Spider-Man fan myself, I was extremely satisfied with just how great the movie turned out. I'll give the film a 9 out of 10. The Marvel Cinematic Universe continues its expansion into realms unknown in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Billed as the MCU's first true stab at horror, they had picked what many felt was the perfect director to bring this darker side of the universe to the big screen. But does Sam Raimi manage to do justice to the material, or is this perhaps another misstep in the highly beloved franchise? Hi guys, Michael Abayemi here, and today I'm reviewing Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. The film picks up after the former Sorcerer Supreme shenanigans in Spider-Man No Way Home, but in terms of overall continuity, the movie has closer ties with the first Doctor Strange film and his involvement in Avengers Infinity War and Endgame, as well as WandaVision and certain story beats from Marvel's What If. Because of this, the aforementioned stories seem like required viewing in order to fully grasp what is going on here. In terms of the film's actual plot though, it is hard to discuss any of it without immediately falling into spoiler territory. But believe me when I say that none of that is enough to prepare you for the true scope of the film, which goes beyond anything you could have imagined. There are plenty of twists along the way, and the fact that they were able to condense all that storytelling into 2 hours is a feat in itself. So I'll jump right into my thoughts about the film, which I thought was amazing. Or to put it in another way, the film was every bit as wild and bonkers as its trailers promised, and then some. It delves into areas of Marvel lore that have seldom been explored outside of the comic books, showing once again that Kevin Feige and his writers still have a vast sea of material to craft stories from. It also paints a bright picture for the future of the MCU, with crowd-pleasing cameos that hint at great things to come down the road ahead. And speaking of paints and pictures, Multiverse of Madness is easily the most visually striking film in the MCU, managing to outdo the already mind-bending first Doctor Strange movie at every turn. Sam Raimi really goes all in, with his otherworldly depictions of various beings and creatures that call the darkest recesses of the multiverse home, lending the film its signature touch, and never shying away from becoming too scary or graphic with its violence. It might not be a straight-up horror film, but this is as close to horror as the MCU has ever managed to get, and I'm here for it. I do indeed need to also touch upon the stars of the whole thing. It is after all still a Doctor Strange movie. Both Elizabeth Olsen and Benedict Cumberbatch give what is perhaps their best performances as their respective characters since they set foot in the MCU, while Xochitl Gomez makes a memorable debut as America Chavez. It was also nice seeing both Rachel McAdams and Chiwetel Ejiofor reprise their roles from the first film, and Benedict Wong gets to shine like never before. It is almost tempting for me to end the review here, and declare that Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness is a perfect film. But if I'm to point out any perceived flaws in its storytelling, then it's the fact that the film often felt overstuffed for its 2 hours runtime. It is also worth mentioning that the horror elements might not be to everyone's taste, especially families with younger children who'd grown up to love these characters over the course of the previous films. But if you're a fan of Sam Raimi and his work in past films like Evil Dead and Drag Me to Hell, then there's plenty to love about this one. Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness is a treat for the eyes and senses. But even more than that, it is one of those rare sequels that manages to upstage its original. I haven't been this thoroughly entertained by a Sam Raimi film since Spider-Man 2. The director once again proves why his unique sensibilities work so well in the context of a comic book movie, and it is that vision that carries the latest film through in the end. I'll give the film a 9 out of 10. The fourth film to center upon the misadventures of the MCU's resident God of Thunder has arrived, and its arrival marks the return of Taika Waititi, who once again takes his place in the director's chair, looking to replicate some of the magic he had infused into Thor Ragnarok. But does his latest film manage to surpass the lofty heights of the previous one, or is it just another case of more of the same? Hi guys, Michael Abayemi here, and today I'm reviewing Thor Love and Thunder. The story picks up right where Avengers Endgame left off, with Thor Odinson, now a proud member of the Guardians of the Galaxy. Meanwhile, a new villain named Gore the God Butcher lives up to his name, by wreaking havoc across several planets as he goes around slaying their gods. This will force Thor to set off on a quest to stop him before he rids the entire galaxy of all the gods. But Thor will need all the help he can get, even if it means looking for it in the most unexpected places. The Thor movies haven't always been in the topmost tier of the MCU. All that had changed with Thor Ragnarok, of course, a movie that many considered a pleasant surprise with how well we balance some of its heavier subject matters with moments of levity. But with that sense of surprise now gone, Thor Love and Thunder can't help but feel like another attempt to capture lightning in the bottle. This is my way of saying your enjoyment of the film could very well hinge on how much you enjoyed the last one. Because for better or worse, the new film doubles down on a lot of the humor and overall lightheartedness that has since come to define the series. Taika Waititi once again proves that he knows how to handle these characters, bringing out yet another round of standout performances from the cast. Christian Bale was formidable as Gore, while Russell Crowe provided some of the movie's biggest laughs. The whole thing did tend to border a little too close to the edge of slapstick this time around though, and while not every single one of his jokes might land, there is bound to be at least one or two that will get even the most jaded or cynical moviegoers chuckling out loud. I particularly found the two ghosts to be comically obnoxious, and there was a line about God's teeth that had me in stitches. Aside from getting his audience to laugh, the movie still needs to provide some decent action to be considered a true product of the MCU, and it certainly delivers on those fronts as well, with some of the most gloriously over-the-top action and heavily stylized blood and gore I've seen in a PG-13 movie. There is one particular scene that was shot in stunning black and white, using splashes of color to depict the interplay between light and shadow. It is such moments that help elevate the film beyond being just another film-like entry in the Thor series and larger MCU. Thor: Love and Thunder employs a lot of the same tricks that help define Thor Ragnarok, particularly his reliance on humor to tell an otherwise dark and heartfelt story. Taika Waititi has already proven through films like Jojo Rabbit that he knows how to tug on people's heartstrings when he needs to, and it does so effortlessly in this one. The film might not quite manage to reach or exceed the sheer brilliance of Thor Ragnarok, but it still offers enough entertainment value to be considered a good time at the movies. I'll give the film an 8 out of 10. The fourth phase of the Marvel Cinematic Universe comes to an end with Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. This is after it had given us a string of movies and TV shows that, while they've worked to expand the universe in a multitude of interesting ways, have failed to give fans any clear indication of what the future holds for the multi-billion-dollar franchise. So you can imagine the heights of my expectations heading into the new Black Panther, which not only had to wrap up the current phase, but also had to carry on Chadwick Boseman's legacy as the iconic character. But does the film manage to do either of those two things, or was it bogged down by the weight of its own ambition? Hi guys, Michael Abayimi here, and today I'm reviewing Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. The film wastes no time as it opens with a scene that addresses the death of the Wakandan king, T'Challa. And since this review is intended to be spoiler-free, I will not be detailing the specifics of how his passing was handled within the context of the film. But his death would serve as a catalyst for the bulk of the story, as it immediately creates a power vacuum that Queen Ramonda struggles to fill, even as foreign nations threaten her homeland. The biggest threat, though, will come in the form of Talokan, an underwater nation ruled by the ageless king, Namor. So that when both nations find themselves on opposite sides of a brewing conflict, Shuri and the rest of the Wakandans must do whatever it takes to protect their people. The first Black Panther film is to this day one of my favorite entries in the MCU, bested only by the likes of Captain America: Civil War. And that other film had itself worked as well as it did, because it marked the introduction of both Peter Parker and T'Challa. The latter was portrayed by Chadwick Boseman, who had succeeded in infusing the larger-than-life figure with enough charm and charisma to endear fans. And over the course of his multiple MCU appearances, he'd grown to embody that character in more ways than one. So it was always going to be a Herculean task, crafting a new Black Panther film in the wake of his passing. There are those that still feel the character should have simply been recast. After all, it wouldn't be the first time a prominent character is being played by multiple actors in the MCU. And while I understand why Kevin Feige and Ryan Coogler had ultimately opted not to do so, I'd be lying if I said that decision didn't end up hurting Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. For all of his ambitions, the film never manages to shake the feeling that there is something missing. It was in dire need of a lead that was strong enough to carry the weight of his plot on his or her shoulders, and even though the remaining members of the supporting cast had done their best in the situation they found themselves in, there is only so much they could do to fill the massive void left behind by Chadwick Boseman. So given the direction that they had decided to go in, it can be argued that the film works best when viewed as a tribute to both Chadwick Boseman and T'Challa. The film uses their absence to serve as an examination of grief, as we watch how the Black Panther's death had affected those that held him most dear. All the actors gave heartfelt performances in that regard, though I was somewhat disappointed to find that both Nakia and M'Baku had been terribly underutilized overall, considering how great they had been in the first movie. But perhaps that is understandable when you consider that the film also had to introduce a number of new characters, like Namor and the Talokans, and give them all the requisite character development they deserve. Another such character is Riri Williams, aka Ironheart, who felt shoehorned into the story as a quick introduction ahead of our upcoming Disney Plus show. Her appearance here does very little to prime me for that show, but I guess it's also possible that I've just been watching these MCU movies long enough to see the gears turning behind the curtain. Visually speaking, Wakanda Forever is a feast for the eyes and senses, with enough action to satisfy those looking for that specifically. And all of it is complemented by another stellar score from Ludwig Göransson, although much like Chadwick, Kendrick Lamar's absence is also acutely felt on the music front. It is also worth noting that those fans that had taken issue with the light-hearted tone in other Phase 4 entries like Hawkeye, She-Hulk, and Thor: Love and Thunder will be pleased to find something closer to older MCU films here. My biggest issue with Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, however, is how it doesn't address any of the events in the other Phase 4 films. Even the first Black Panther film had felt like a logical follow-up to the events in Captain America Civil War. This one, by contrast, functions as yet another standalone film that sheds no light on where the franchise is currently headed. It equally doesn't do a very good job of contextualizing itself within larger MCU events like the Thanos snap, so we are left to come up with our own theories once again as to how his characters might have been affected by that. As a tribute to the late great Chadwick Boseman, Black Panther Wakanda Forever works beautifully. But as the final film in the fourth phase of the MCU, it doesn't quite tie things together like I'd hoped it would, nor does it even make any kind of attempt to do so. It is clear that Ryan Coogler and crew had made the film without knowing the significance of its placement in the overall MCU. Either that, or the phases themselves have simply become meaningless delineators in a post-Endgame MCU. So my advice to anyone going into the movie is to approach it as its own thing, rather than another piece of a larger puzzle. I'll give the film an 8 out of 10. What did you think about Phase 4 of the MCU? Let me know in the comment section down below. Don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed watching this compilation, and to subscribe to the channel with notifications turned on if you like seeing individual reviews for all the movies in Phase 5. And until the next one, this is Michael, signing off.